Hello everyone! You read the title of the video, so let's get right into X mode. X mode is a vital part of your switch gauge management in Wilds because it doesn't replenish automatically anymore unless you sheath your weapon. You have to land X attacks to refill it. The spiral rising slash gives a huge chunk back and is now the third hit in your triple triangle chain: overhead, sideway and spiral rising slash. But it can also be accessed after certain attacks like the morph attack back to X mode, which is amazing because it quickly lets you refill that gauge to keep the sword mode action going. As openers we have both the forward jab and the forward overhead slash. You can even chain them into each other. Coming to Wild Swing, you only need 2 swings to perform the heavy slam, and the Wild Swing in general is easier to get out of, making it a little less committing. Power X mode is back, but it gives a flat damage increase to your X mode now. Power X mode can be entered or prolonged, if you already are in Power X mode, by the heavy slam, the sneak attack, after a successful offset slash, or as a focus strike finisher. The X mode focus strike consists of 4 uppercut wild swings leading to the aforementioned heavy slam for Power X mode, or you can chain to sword mode for a quick discharge finisher. We also still have our morph sweep with very good range and decent damage, but it is a very committing attack, so be careful when you use it. My beloved fade slashes have all been sped up, which actually makes them a decent option to evade attacks. But you don't need to evade all attacks, some can be offset. The timing window for this is pretty tight. It starts at around the time your axe leaves the ground and lasts almost until your rising slash comes to a full stop. And my god, does this feel amazing. The offset slash can then be followed up by the heavy slam, granting Power X mode, which looks a lot like Invincible Gambit, or a powerful sideways slash in sword mode. You can also cancel out of the follow-up with a dodge, because sometimes the hit isn't guaranteed. Offset attacks have a hidden resistance, which increases with every offset attack. The first one is basically always successful, but consecutive ones don't stun the monsters anymore, so be careful. And now onto sword mode. You can switch between modes pretty much after any attack and even mid-chain, even while doing your focus strike or after chain finishers. There are very few times you cannot switch back and forth, which makes for a wonderful flow. And yes, we can morph attack from neutral. Your basic chain, triple triangle and double circle are unchanged from previous titles except for some animation work. After a double sideways slash or the heavenward flurry, so your circle chain, you can still chain into a discharge. The simplest and fastest way to empt state is still your sideway into heavenward chain, but there are new ways to boost your empt meter. After an offset slash in X mode, you can follow up with R2 for a morph attack, dealing good damage and building a nice chunk of empt meter, for example. And we have a sweet counter in sword mode, which also builds empt meter and switch gauge if performed correctly. By pressing R2 and triangle at the same time, at any time in sword mode, you do your counter. From neutral, mid-chain, after a chain finisher, doesn't matter. It is always available. It isn't as strong as the counter from Sunbreak, but that is a good thing, honestly. It is literally made to keep your flow going. That's its purpose. Not to outdamage any other option, but to keep you in the fight. You can counter roars, however you don't get stunned by roars. It's a bit weird, but whatever. Don't use it on low health though, because you still take damage. And honestly, I don't know how to feel about it. But anyway, I will do a separate video where I talk about my feelings towards Switch X in Wilds. I still have to play the weapon a bit more, I think. The zero-sum discharge is also back, of course, but this time you can choose which discharge you want to do after entering empt state. To perform the ZSD, you have to hold down the button prompt. If not, you do your standard discharge. ZSD has hyper armor, which means you cannot be thrown down, unless you card, of course. Just like in previous titles, you can finish the ZSD early and land on your feet, which puts you into neutral. And last but not least, we have another new move that may will become part of our newest DPS chain, the full release slash in empt state, or a lesser release if you aren't empt. You can perform it from neutral by pressing R2, circle and triangle, or by pressing R2 after a discharge. You can chain into it as a finisher for massive damage, but also high commitment. Most of the hitbox appears to be on the right side of your hunter, the trajectory is definitely not straightforward. It is similar to the morph sweep, which also has most of its range towards the right. Keep that in mind when going for a punish on a downed monster. In terms of motion values and special properties, whether discharges can crit and so on, we cannot tell yet, but I will keep my eyes open, and once the game actually releases, I will of course post a full in-depth guide, like the one for Iceborne, with chains being shown for all platforms and so on. We are only playing a beta, so there are still things to change, and I highly recommend you to do the Capcom survey. A link is in the pinned comment below. I hope you have a lot of fun playing the beta, and if you have questions, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you what you think of the Switch X and the game in general. More videos will come soon, so I hope to see you on the next one. Happy hunting, guys.
お前はもう死んでいる。何？大技